Do you want to fully leverage the power of AI reasoning models for free? In this video, I will show step by step how to build a reasoning prompt using the Groq Cloud Platform and the Qwen open source large language model to do so. And as an example, I will show how you can leverage reasoning prompting to automate the creation of a customized marketing campaign for different customer segments using this reasoning approach. So let's get started. Yes, so let me briefly explain what we actually mean with reasoning. So if you use ChatGPT, you might have noticed that when you write a prompt, maybe a bit more complex prompt, it will mention thinking. And when you see that, it has enabled what is called a reasoning model. And what do reasoning models do? Actually, before executing your prompt, reasoning models will kind of think about what are the steps that I need to execute to do this prompt. Now, if you're in the free ChatGPT account, you cannot really control when it uses a thinking model or not. It will decide for you. When you have a subscription account, you can actually enable thinking models. But today, I want to show you a free alternative that I think is very useful, namely the Groq Cloud Platform, where you can really choose yourself to enable reasoning prompts. And I will then also show you how you can actually use these prompts in your own local environment. Yes, so let me now show you how you can build and execute a reasoning prompt in Groq. And Groq has nothing to do with the Groq of Elon Musk. And now we can get started. So let's do that. And then we can go to the playground. And this is the place where we can start executing prompts. So this is how it looks like. So here on the left-hand side, I can write a system prompt and a user prompt. That's what developers always do. So the system prompt gives instructions in what the large language model needs to do, and the user prompt gives specific inputs. Now today we will use as a model, you can actually choose here different open source models, but today I will use the Qwen model. And why do I want to use that? Because this is one of the models at the Groq platform that allows for reasoning. Yeah? So here we can actually choose. So here we want now the reasoning to be enabled. So that's the default option here. So now the reasoning will be enabled. So that's important that we have it. And now I can here start writing my prompts. And the example I will use is I actually want to create a marketing campaign for a specific value proposition tailored towards a specific customer segment. So let me show you the system prompt that I prepared to do so. So here is my system prompt where I say you're an expert in creating a marketing campaign for a specific value proposition and for a specific customer segment. You see I made some spelling mistakes, but that's not an issue. Large language models can deal with that. And let me also show you the user prompt that I have provided here. Yes, so as user prompt, I give a value proposition, in this case, an app that allows individuals to monitor their energy bills, and I provide a customer segment, in this case, urban renters. And now we can simply press on submit, and then it will execute the prompt for me using the reasoning model. So now the assistant has executed the reasoning model, and you can see that here, that it indeed has been thinking, like you would also see in ChatGPT. So initially, we don't get the output, we simply now see the reasoning that the assistant has applied for executing our prompt. So now let's take a look at the actual output. Yes, so here is my actual output. So it created for me a slogan, a product description tailored towards the customer segment, and some key benefits. So this is exactly what I wanted. So here you can see how you can easily execute a reasoning prompt in Groq. And now I will show you how we can actually very easily transform this prompt to our own local environment. So let's move forward. Yes, so I will use now Microsoft Visual Code as my coding environment. So here we are in Microsoft Visual Studio Code. Make sure that you have the Python extension enabled. And I will also use the GitHub Copilot agent as my little helper. If you have not yet installed that, I have a separate video that you can see on the top of my screen. So then you can easily follow step by step how to install everything. But this is what we need to start working. And so now I can open a particular folder where I want to do the coding. Yes, so I opened the folder, and here we will have our coding notebook that you can also find in the description. So there will be a link. I have my Groq API key. This is what I need to kind of communicate with the large language model in coding. If you have not yet an API key, then in the top of the screen, you can now find a link to how to get it. And I have here an Excel sheet with different customer segments that we will use later on. So now I will simply open my notebook. Yes, and now I can start coding. So we first need to import some libraries, so the OS library and from Groq. If you have never installed it, then you need to first do pip install Groq. But if you have already installed it, then you're okay. So now we can run enter. So I enable my Python environment here. And I will also load my Groq API key that is stored in this text file. So now I can just press enter here, and in that way, throughout my whole coding, it will know that every time that I need an API key, it will have to use this Groq API key. So in that way, we are settled. And here you will see again, I have already kind of upfront coded all the necessary prompts that I need. So I have a system prompt. This is a prompt I showed you before. I have a value proposition. And I have a customer segment. So these are just text that I generated already. And then the user prompt is, of course, the combination of this value proposition and customer segment. And this is actually a nice way how to code it. So in that way, you start with an F, and then between brackets, you say value proposition. And then I enter the variable here between these brackets and also customer segment. And you see when it's blue, it will use this variable. So this is a nice way to code what I need. So I have my system prompt and my user prompt being defined. And now I can actually, again, start adding the prompt from Groq. So let us do that now. So I will create here a new coding block. And here I want to enable the large language model. And so what do we need to do now? Actually, it's quite easy. We already were in Groq, so let me go briefly back. Yeah, so now we can see here the code, and now I simply have to copy this code. So I can do that here by pressing copy, and I go back to my Microsoft Visual Codes. This, of course, we did already right, so this I can remove now. And you will see, because I executed the prompts in the Groq platform, it will give me more info that I need here. Yeah? So actually this part, the role assistant, this is what it executed. So this now I have to remove again. So the only thing I need is the first system and the first user, and all the other things I want to remove now. So let me do that. Yeah, so I removed now these parts. And here again, we can see the full model with the client, the temperature. Yes, and so now we are ready to execute this prompt. So let us do that. And you see it's now running. This typically takes a bit more time because now we have a reasoning prompt. And now we can take a look at the output. And you see I get the thinking part. Yeah, so I will now see what kind of thinking it has done. And then I will also see the final output. Yeah, so now, of course, it has a much longer text, but here you see where the thinking has stopped. And here I get my final output. So this is how we can execute the reasoning prompt in the model. Now, you can see this is a bit messy because typically I don't want to have this thinking part as output. I will not use that. So I only want to have a kind of structured output where I get exactly what I wanted. Yeah? So here I wanted to have the product description, slogan, and the benefits. These three elements I actually want to extract out of this output. Now let me show you how we can easily do that by enabling something additionally on the Groq platform. Yeah, so here I'm back in the Groq platform, and now I will enable something called here JSON mode. And that means now it will actually try to create for me a very structured output in a JSON format. And this is a format that developers use a lot. And the only thing I now need to do is into my system prompt stipulate a bit what I exactly want as output. So now I will add here, please provide as output a JSON object with the following keys. And keys are kind of the different outputs that we want. So we want slogan, product description, and product benefits. And here actually it might make sense to make sure that I don't have spelling mistakes, because otherwise it might create a strange JSON object. Yes, but this is what we need to change now. And now I can press submit again. And now you should see that the output is now structured in a different way. Yes, and now I also have to add, of course, again, my user prompt. So let me do that again. Yes, so we have the same value proposition, same customer segment, and now I can press submit. And now let's see what it generates for me as an output. And now you can see that the output has changed. So actually the description of the thinking has now become kind of this transparent text, and the actual output is a JSON object with indeed slogan, product description, and product benefits as the keys. Yeah? So let us now do this also in our coding environment. So now I simply will go back to the coding here and press copy. And let's now go back here to the Visual Studio Code. I will now add a coding block, paste in this new code. Again, this we can remove because we have already given that. So let's, yes, and as before, we just want to have the first user prompt and system prompt. So I will remove these parts. Yeah, so now I have removed the part. So let's press enter and let's see what output we get. And now also here you see we get an object with the content is our JSON object. So now what I simply need to do is here to create an output variable. Yeah. So I will say the output is indeed completion choices 0 message dot content. That's where actually in my complex object the actual output has been generated. So now I can also do print output, and then I should nicely see the JSON object that is generated. Yeah? And indeed, now I can see here the slogan, product description, and product benefits structured as a nice JSON object. Now, at the moment, this is still actually a string. Yeah? So my output variable is still a string that looks like a JSON object, but I still have to transform it into a JSON object. And how can we do that? Quite simply, we first have to import the JSON library, which is a predefined library. And now I can say output, and we create a new variable now, output JSON, and then we need to load this output. And here, again, the GitHub Copilot was adequately predicting what I wanted to do. So now I can press play. And now I have a JSON object from which I can now select the necessary things. So for instance, now we can define slogan. The variable slogan is now the slogan part, product description is the product description part, and the product benefits is the product benefits part. And again, here you see that the GitHub Copilot agent perfectly predicts what I want to do. So I can now press enter. And now actually I got an error message, so let's take a look. And that's typically something to do with the name product description. So now I need to see what is the, so that I miss here this thing between the different things. So here the prediction of the GitHub Copilot agent was not perfect, so we need to add this thing. And I think the same for product benefits. So let me press play, and now it makes sense. So now I can briefly ask print slogan, and then we should get the slogan for this customer segment. And now I again made a mistake, so let me take a look. Yeah, here I defined it with 2 G's, so let me remove that one, make it nicer. And now I have my slogan here. Yeah? So this is how I can then extract the necessary elements out of the prompt. Now, why do we want to do that? Because the big advantage of doing this in your own coding environment is now that we can really scale up the reasoning. So we cannot do this just for one single customer segment. We can do this for multiple customer segments. So let me briefly show you how we can do that. And here we will use actually this Excel sheet. So this Excel sheet actually is simply an Excel sheet with an overview of different customer segments. So let me briefly show you that. Yes, so here I have an Excel with the segment name and then different customer segments. And now let's imagine that for all of these customer segments, I want to generate the same marketing material, and that we can do now very quickly by scaling our code in Microsoft Visual Studio Code. So let me show you how we can do that. Yeah, so the first thing we now need to do is to actually read our Excel sheet, and that we do by using pandas. Yeah, so pandas is another library, so we need to import pandas, and this is typically how we do that. So if you have not yet installed, the first thing you will have to do is to do pip install pandas. Now in my case it's installed, so I can now run this library, and now we can actually read the Excel. So now we can read the Excel file, and we do this like this. Now here the Copilot agent cannot predict the actual name of my file, so that I need to do myself. So I will now have to put here the right name. So let me briefly copy paste that. And we also have to remove this sheet name. That was also not right prediction. So now I can press enter, and it made a mistake. And this is a very typical mistake, I think. Yes. So I have the Excel file open on my computer, and then it says permission denied. So this happens a lot. And now I just have to make sure that I close the Excel sheet on my computer, and then I have to run it again. This will happen a lot when you do coding, but now it has read the Excel file. Let me briefly check if it looks like it should look. So I can do df hat and take a look at the Excel file. And indeed, I now have these different customer segments. Yeah? And so now what I want to do is to, for every segment in my Excel, I want to execute this whole reasoning prompt that we did before. And then we want to store the output into lists of the different elements. So I will actually, first of all, create 3 different lists. So I will create a list for the slogan, so a slogan list. I will create a list for the descriptions. And again, you can see that GitHub Copilot agent knows what I want to do. Now I will also create a list for the column that I have in. So now I will also create a list for my customer segments. So I will call that customer segment. And here already predicts. So this means I take the column from my data frame and I transform that into a list. Yeah? And now I can actually loop through all the elements in my customer segment lists. And how can we do that? I can say, okay, for every segment in my customer segment list, now I will create every time a new user prompt. Yeah, so every time the value proposition will stay the same. Yeah, so the value proposition will stay the same. And now it will every time enter here the segment that it selects from this list for every different segment. Yeah? So that's what it will do. And then it will simply, again, execute the prompts that we had before. Yeah? So actually here I have the system prompt that's stable, but now as content I use the user prompt that is defined here. So in that way it will loop through all my customer segments and execute them. And you see we have the reasoning model enabled, so that's all perfectly okay. And then in the end it will create for every loop the output, transform that into a JSON file, and then add all these elements through these lists that I've created. So in the end, I will in that way create a list where for every loop, it will add the necessary information. So now I can press enter, and now I get an error message. So let's see what is the problem here. So it said, okay, customer segment is not defined. So let us take a look what is wrong here. This is again a wrong prediction of my Copilot agent. Yeah, so actually it says the column name is customer segment, but actually the column name is segment name. So this is something I need to replace. Yeah, so here you see that not always the Copilot agent is perfectly able to predict everything, but then by simply checking the errors, you should be able to solve that. So I press enter. And I get a new error message. And this probably means that it now, when using the large language model, that sometimes it doesn't have this underscore and sometimes it has. And it means actually that in our instructions, we should better define this. Yeah? So now I go back here to my actual prompt and I will make it clearer that we need here always an underscore, so that it is more stable in that respect. So I think in this case, now the problem should be solved. So let's run again. Yeah, so now it's finished and you see that in like 16 seconds it's created the marketing material for all my customer segments. And now I can transform these lists into columns. So I would say transform lists to the data frame, and now it will create 3 new columns for my slogan, description, and benefits. So let me do that. And now we can double check. So now I can do df head again. And you see I nicely have now for every segment a slogan, a product description, and product benefits. And then this data frame I can again export to an Excel file. So now I can say df to Excel, and now it will create for me a new Excel file with all the information. Yes, I hope that this video has shown how you can really leverage the power of reasoning models very easily and for free using the cloud platform. So in the next video, I will actually show you how you can enable the web search functionality when prompting, so that you can actually allow prompts to go to the internet and search for information. So if you want to see that next video, make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you will get a notification when this new video is published. Okay, thanks for your attention. Bye.